Governor, on the Attica investigation, is there any reason why an impartial investigation can't be conducted to see whether the prosecution is being conducted properly?
Today, there's a meeting held at my instruction between Counsel Rivets of the Executive Chamber and the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals on the discussion of the powers of our government. There was a judicial process going on involving prosecution. At the same time, I had arranged a meeting with the Attorney General. He was unable to keep the appointment for personal reasons, which he discussed with me. We've rescheduled that meeting for Monday. I will move with decision, with all the power I have, to make sure the ends of justice are secured at Attica. But it is a judicial process. There's a prosecution involved. And as I've said, I must be extremely careful, precise, make certain I do nothing to impair the ends of justice.
But if the prosecution is tainted at this point, if certain key witnesses have not been called, isn't it necessary to act before the bond door is closed?
Gabe, the key word you just issued is if. The governor cannot proceed on an if where the law is concerned. I have to follow the law, examine the law. We're looking at the law. I cannot proceed on an assumption where the law is concerned. We are in contact with the court and with the Attorney General, who is the elected officer who is charged with the prosecution of the Attica investigation since 1971. I must give the Attorney General his opportunity to discuss his responsibility.
Before you act any other way.
Can we hold this for a later time?
Carey, in recognition of his inspired leadership and outstanding accomplishments in advancing the cause of good government, for his wisdom in state and national affairs, and in his tireless efforts in support of the four freedoms as emanated by the late President Franklin D. Roosevelt: freedom of speech and worship, freedom of want and fear. Dr. Carey, I present you with this award, and I know you are going to do honor to the memory of our great governor and great president. This is a bust of President Roosevelt. So I think it's the last of those that we cast, and I think our cabinet actually more deserving to do our to receive it, and so I'm happy to be able to do this to you as a memento and as an inspiration to you. We are grateful.
Thank you, Governor Averell Harriman, Governor Salmon, Joe Robinson, Frank Roosevelt, members of the Roosevelt families, distinguished Americans who are gathered here this evening. Indeed, it is time that a likeness of Franklin Roosevelt was placed in the Executive Mansion on Eagle Street in Albany. It will be there as soon as possible, I assure you. So kind and generous of all of you to recognize the passage of my birthday tomorrow. Indeed, one of my children, noting that I had to mark the anniversary of my birth 6 years after my mid-century mark, heard of all the interest in the first 100 days of our administration in Albany. And I said, I wonder why so many people are interested in what I'm doing in my first 100 days, and there seems to be that indifference that Tom Salmon talked about my first 100 nights. And my daughter said, "Dad, you're 56 years old. There'll be a lot more indifference." Just to prevent that, I've already made a date for next year with someone who shares my birthday, Commissioner Ellie Guggenheimer, who also has April 11th as her birthday. Indeed, I share with all of you tonight a sense of gratitude for the spirit that brings us together, especially to our neighboring governor, His Excellency Tom Salmon, of the great state of Vermont. Indeed, I wonder why it is that we begin our presidential primaries in New Hampshire. We might do much better to make certain that we could begin to elect the next Democratic president by carrying Vermont. And all I ask from Tom is that you agree to come to the convention in New York. Be known. This is an evening when I share with you a sense of reverence, and I have respect and humility as I receive this award, because I recollect the predecessors, this podium were John Kennedy, Adlai Stevenson, Eleanor Roosevelt, Herbert Lehman. These are people who helped to shape my sense of public concern. To be honored with this same award as they received it makes much of the hard work and the setbacks and the uncertainties worthwhile in any part of public life. All of us, the great men and women who have stood here before me, I think feel a sense of pride that we're honored in the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a great public man and heroic figure for all time. Especially today, because no one in public life has an easy job. All of us looking around today can find more than enough troubles to cloud our minds. There is suffering and defeat and uncertainty abroad. There's fear for a gallant Israeli ally, isolated by geography from the hard economic temptation among all too many to trade principle for petroleum. There's an American economy stagnant and a government at every level, burdened by debt. There seems to be a malaise in the American spirit, and as Abraham Harriman has said, an indulgence for recrimination in high places that is no part of the American morale that we need. If we're weary of war and corruption and violence and the corrosion of pride and self-confidence, then it's time to think tonight of Franklin Roosevelt. And if we think, as we face all of this today, of what Franklin Roosevelt, faced when he first came to public office, it will inspire us. When he went to the legislature from Dutchess County in 1910, he said, and I quote, "There is nothing I love so much as a good fight." The legislature hasn't changed much to 1974, I assure you, 1975. But in his time, as governor of New York and as president of the United States, kind of presidency Tom Salmon talked about, he faced the most severe challenge of any chief executive, save Lincoln, in the midst of a civil war. We struggle today with a jobless rate around 9%, and it may exceed 10% in some of our states and cities and higher in our neighborhoods. But when Franklin Roosevelt took the helm, a quarter of the American people, 25%, were out of work and in starvation. We struggle today with a banking system, sometimes unresponsive to public needs, troubled by some excesses. But 42 years ago, many banks could not open at all. The life savings of thousands of Americans were lost. He stepped in. We face today a world of new realities, when the belief in American omnipotence has been stripped away from our eyes, and we fear. But Roosevelt faced a world in which a madman had totalitarian control of a mighty industrial nation and sought nothing less than the conquest of the world and the annihilation of an entire people.
Roosevelt led as a president should. He was a human being, fallible and sometimes mistaken. But he never mistook words for deeds, and he never tried to hide reality. And he always remembered that his job was to work for the American in the factory, on the farm, in the home. He remembered the forgotten man. And now we no longer have the forgotten man, if we will remember Franklin Roosevelt. In the American dream, far from the marble halls of government, on his shoulders rested the future of a country. And we cannot say too much of his determination, his confidence, and the pride and hope he infused throughout the American mainstream. He lifted the morale of a great people, and that was the key difference between success and collapse in our time. Will Rogers, speaking more plainly than many, saw the truth more clearly, perhaps, on Inauguration Day, when he wrote, and I quote, "Americans haven't been as happy in 3 years as they are today. They have no banks, no money, no work, nothing. But they know they got a man in there who was wise to the so-called big men. The whole country is with him." What a day that was for us. What days are ahead if we remember the lesson of Franklin Roosevelt. I remember a more personal sense of FDR's meaning. Yes, as Governor Harriman has said, he was my commander-in-chief. For many of us in this room, he was our commander-in-chief. And for millions of people who fought a great war. I remember that day 30 years ago in Europe. Word came to us in a sector in which I was involved near the Elbe River that Franklin Roosevelt had died. Men who had been long in battle for months tend to put aside everything at a time like that. And on that day, in the heat of battle, silence fell like a shroud among the troops, because all of us knew that one of us had fallen. But when shock abated, we saw too that he had not succumbed to death, but passed on to victory in the battle. And after the war, I was still inspired by my former commander-in-chief. And we live today to see the realization of his dreams in the United Nations and the war that goes on against hunger and fear, against any restraint on our freedoms, as we practice that tonight. When I turned to politics with other young men, inspired in the same manner, I found his spirit marching. Herbert Lehman, his successor, helped to bring us together as young Democrats and young Americans. Franklin Roosevelt was among those young Democrats who joined to revive the spirit of his father in the Democratic Party. I remember as a leader of young Democrats in New York at that time, I was able to stand in a crowded Midtown room where we had people turned away, young people, because we had an attraction, a spokesman, person who all wanted to hear. And we heard a gentle yet powerful voice speaking of what should be done. We heard the voice of Eleanor Roosevelt. We realized our movement had found a new commander-in-chief. See, women's liberation was quite a bit ahead of our time. The inspiration I received there guided me to the place I hold in the Empire State today. And I will always remember and revere the noble principles by which Franklin Roosevelt must be remembered, our four freedoms. In these times, what better guidance could we seek? So I thank all responsible for this honor. I hope and trust that my public life will show that your confidence is well placed. Whatever may be the programs and policies of our administration over the coming year, I hope and I pledge to remember Franklin Roosevelt's message about the four freedoms we struggle to enrich. He said, and I quote, "The four freedoms of common humanity are as much elements of man's needs as air and sunshine, bread and salt. Deprive him of all these freedoms, and he dies. Deprive him of a part of them, and a part of them with it. Give them to him in full measure and abundance, and he will cross the threshold of a new age, the greatest age of man. Remembering that, if we strive for abundance of freedom, in the words of Franklin Roosevelt, we'll be on the way to the greatest age of man. For he showed us the path of the four freedoms and the road to the full freedoms. And perhaps we do well for a while to pause and stop thinking about the light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, how many tunnels we've traveled lately. And think perhaps that we should take the path that he took of courage, confidence, determination. The path that was lighted through his entire life and remains with us. It was lighted by the sunrise at Campobello. That's the light that shines tonight, and that's the light that guides us. So, in the path of the four freedoms, let us be on our way. Thank you, and God bless you.